Sukuna doesn't win with cost energy, he wins with contracts. In JJK, binding vows are rules written into reality itself, and nobody bends these rules like the king of courses. Kind of reminds me of Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged.
Screw the rules, I have money.
Today we're ranking all of Sukuna's binding vows, from tactical tweaks to straight up war crimes disguised as agreements. What's up guys, my name is Richard, back again with another video, and in today's video I want to talk about all of Sukuna's binding vows and rank them accordingly. So if you like this video, you know what to do. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe. I'll really appreciate that. And yeah, without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So the first question I want to ask you is, what is a binding vow? Well, a binding vow is a deal sealed with cost energy. It can be with somebody else or with yourself. The stricter the condition, the more powerful or compensation you get. But break it and the backlash is severe. This isn't just a handshake, it's a metaphysical law. Canon example can be seen all throughout the series of both contracts with others and self-imposed vows that tweak cost techniques and domain expansion. So before I start with Sukuna's ranking, there are three popular moments that are not Sukuna's binding vows. The first one I'm going to start with is the Jogo deal in Shibuya. Well, Sukuna says if Jogo can land a hit, he will cooperate and unalive everybody in Shibuya except one. That one being Megumi. Now, that is actually framed as a challenge, not a formal binding vow. And Sukuna even refused Jogo's request to force Yuji into a binding vow, so this doesn't qualify as a binding vow. The second one is Sukuna's Shibuya rampage. As we can see, Sukuna really did want to destroy Shibuya, so even though he did say that he was going to help Jogo destroy Shibuya if Jogo landed the hit, we can see that at the end of the day, Sukuna still went up with the idea. Why? Because he wanted to just mess with Yuji. I just wanted to put this out there so that a lot of people can understand that, yeah, these are things that might look like binding vows but aren't actually binding vows. So without any further ado, let's start with the ranking of Sukuna's binding vow. At number 5, we have the improvised self-binding vows to keep his malevolent shrine at full output in 99 seconds. During the Gojo fight, Sukuna got armed by unlimited void damage. He changed his domain and sign, routed cost technique and barrier usage through an undamaged part of his brain, and critically uses imprecise element improvised binding vows to keep the malevolent shrine running without any drop in range or output for 99 seconds. Now, what does this mean? This is how I would interpret it. We do know that yes, Sukuna can keep his malevolent shrine for 30 to 40 minutes if he wanted to, because he has that much of cost energy. But here is the thing, I feel that the reason why this was possible was because the fact that he minimized the duration to 99 seconds, that is the reason why this thing worked. So yes, it could unleash his full domain expansion, but it would only last 99 seconds. Now, this is to say that yes, Sukuna could in theory have done a longer domain expansion, but it wouldn't be in its full power and it wouldn't be as effective. That was the reason why he did some impromptu binding vows, so that he could actually release the 99-second domain expansion. Now, this is a defensive and a tactical use of vows to maintain an overwhelming pressure. Number 4 is going to be the self-vow, trade Sure It inside for stronger slashes outside the domain expansion. Yes, Sukuna leveraged a self-binding vow to remove the Sure It effect within Malevolent Shrine in exchange for boosting the output of the slash outside of the barrier. Perfect for bullying somebody even while they try to keep the distance or defense. This is a textbook vow trade-off. Weaken one aspect of your domain to supercharge another. It's clever, but it's still a tuning of an already busted kit, so that's the reason why it's in number 4 on my list. Going to number 3, we have the self-vow on Divine Flame Fuga. No multi-target use unless it's inside the domain expansion. To make the Divine Flame even more lethal, Sukuna imposed the binding vow on himself from using it against multiple opponents unless it's inside his domain expansion. In return, the domain technique expands and it can imbue pulverized matter with his Divine Flame explosive cause energy, turning dust into thermobaric bombs that ignite when he triggers the flame. Now, one question I want to ask you guys is, do you think that this binding vow was made during the fight with Sukuna and the rest of the gang, or this fight was even made before the series started? Because one thing I noticed was that when Sukuna used the technique, you can see that all this condition still applied when he fought against Jogo. So I'm thinking that maybe this is something that he did probably in the Heian era, and this just carried on to the Battle of Shinjuku. Number 2 on our list is the self-vow to bypass World Cutting Dismantle activation once. And this happened with Gojo vs Sukuna. So for the slash that unalive Gojo, Sukuna bypassed the usual activation condition of his World Cutting Dismantle by making a binding vow that complicates all future users. After this, he needed an incantation and had to direct the slash part with a third hand. Now you can see why this is kind of broken, because when he did this vow, he did it in Megumi's body. And if you heard what I said, the only way this technique can work is if Sukuna has 3 or 4 hands. And guess what? Sukuna's original body does have 4 hands. That's the reason why this binding vow makes so much sense. It trades future convenience for a decisive present win. It's surgically ruthless and exactly the kind of vow only Sukuna could gamble on mid-war. And finally, number 1 on my list has to be the contract with Yuji, Enchain. The 1 minute control, no unalivement Yuji forgot. The most consequential vow in the series is this 2-party contract Sukuna forced on Yuji. Terms: when Sukuna says enchant, Yuji must hand over his body for 1 minute. During that time, Sukuna won't unalive or injure anyone, and Yuji forgets the vow. Yuji rejected it at first, but Sukuna then challenged Yuji to a duel and said that if he won the duel, the vow take place, and definitely Sukuna won the duel. Fast forward later and Sukuna activates enchant, take over Yuji's body, rips off one of his fingers, turn it into a cursed object and force feeds Megumi, and transferring his conscience into Megumi's body. The domino that toppled the entire late game of JJK. If you're ranking the impact on the plot and the cast, nothing else comes close. So for a lot of you thinking, why did I rank them this way? Well, this is my thought process. The bottom half from number 5 to number 3 are power optimization. Yes, they are brutal, but they are kind of situational. Number 2 is more of like a checkmate vow that flips the entire narrative of a battle. While number 1 is a micro level contract that rewrites who the main body of Sukuna even is for a long stretch of the story. This is the genius behind Sukuna and Yuji's vow. Let me break it down because it's really smart when you get to think about it. The first one, no unalivement. Sounds safe, but not harmless. 1 minute is enough to set traps, move pieces, or hurt people in ways that aren't necessary unaliving them. Sukuna proves this when he uses the 1 minute to engineer a body transfer, all while technically honoring the letter of the vow. Number 2, forgetting the vow is the real blade, because Yuji can't pre-commit counters or warn allies. The keyword Enchain slips past his guards at the worst possible timing. And number 3, it's disguised intent, a 2-party vow that states penalty for breaking it, which builds false trust. Sukuna wraps manipulation in a costume of rules and wins without throwing a punch. So I'm sure you can see the reason why I kept this original binding vow as my number 1, because it's really so layered and smart of Sukuna to do. And this takes us to a more complicated topic: how Sukuna uses self-binding vows as a weapon. Sukuna's self-binding vow showcase a scary idea. When your technique is already monstrous, micro constraints become macro power. Sukuna trades certainty, sure it's inside his domain expansion, for reach and output, harder to avoid slashes outside of his domain expansion, as he did with Gojo vs Sukuna. Ease of activation, Sukuna world slash for one decisive rule-breaking strike against Gojo, and finally flexible area of effect flames for his divine flame only in his domain expansion. It's actually the purest example of JJK risk-reward design philosophy. Sukuna doesn't just accept contracts, he authors them. So there you have it, Sukuna binding vow ranked from the least impactful to the most terrifying. From simple battle agreements with himself all the way to genius binding vows with Yuji, Sukuna proves that his true strength isn't just cost energy, it's the ability to bind even the rules of Jujutsu itself. In essence, it's the ability to screw the rules because he has money.
Screw the rules, I have money.
But now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Which of Sukuna's vow do you think is the most dangerous? Did I miss something in my list? Let me know down in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. We are currently aiming for 100 subscribers and your support means everything. Thank you very much for watching and I'll definitely see you guys later.